Welcome back. Well, it's Monday, and this is the day of the week on Middle East Now, when we take a deep dive and a look at some of the cultural highlights across the region. And our culture correspondent, Sami Israel, is here with me in the studio for that. Great to see you as always, Sami.
You too.
And we're going to start in Egypt, where the government has launched an incentive to restore Jewish sites in Cairo. Tell us a bit about that.
Yes, exactly. So there was a recent announcement from Egypt's Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities that they are going to be restoring the historic Ben Ezra Synagogue, which is considered the oldest synagogue in Egypt. It's really a stunning building. The building itself is actually from the 1890s, but originally was constructed in the Middle Ages. So it's significant for various reasons, one of which is that the historic Cairo Geniza was found there. So a Geniza in Judaism is a storage space essentially for sacred texts and religious texts as they await to be buried. So that was discovered there in the late 19th century and gave tremendous insight into medieval jewelry, essentially. So it's significant for that reason from a historical point of view. The building itself is also gorgeous. So they have decided to go through with it and to restore it, which is very exciting. So again, it is going to be
it's fascinating. It's right
Yes.
in the heart of Cairo.
Yes.
And people have been using it all this time. There has been a community using it all this time.
So it is currently being used as a tourism point.
Okay.
It's not an active synagogue. So again, they're using this as a point of restoration, and they are doing it to promote tourism. So they have been suffering. Their tourism industry has been suffering tremendously, unfortunately, since 2011, since the revolution. That's a very important source of their economy, and so they're doing it to again entice tourists and Israeli tourism in particular. And that's been a significant point of interest for them. A lot of Israelis visit the Sinai, and there are a lot of new direct flights between Egypt and Israel, and so they want to entice those Israeli tourists, as they often stay in the Sinai, entice them further in, and restore these historic sites, including these synagogues. But unfortunately, Egypt is definitely the exception and not the rule. There has been centuries of Jewish history throughout the Middle East. But again, Egypt, one of the few that is actually taking a concerted effort to restore these sites. So there's an organization called Diarna, which means our homes in Judeo-Arabic, that is taking a digital approach to restoring and preserving these sites online. And they take a very dynamic, multifaceted approach. So they do that through contemporary and archival photographs. They do that through oral history, through interviewing people who lived in those communities throughout the Middle East. And they do that through interviewing people on the ground there as well, people who lived near these Jewish communities. So I had the privilege to speak to Jason Guberman, who is he's the executive director of digital heritage mapping, and also the project coordinator at Diarna. And I spoke to him about the way that they conduct info gathering to carry out their operation, and how they have volunteers on the ground who help them do so. So let's take a listen to what he had to say.
So most people are shocked that the majority of volunteers for Diarna, this has been a massive international, mostly volunteer effort since 2008, have not been Jewish. Many of them have been young Arabs, Berbers, Amazigh, Kurds, people of all backgrounds and of good conscience who are interested in preserving this heritage. Some of them, like one of our researchers in the past, Shema, was from northern Egypt, and she grew up surrounded by Jewish sites but had no idea.
Interesting. So this is really a huge project, isn't it? Trying to trace all those Jewish communities across the Middle East. What else did he tell you? Yeah,
absolutely. Like you said, a very dynamic effort, extremely multifaceted, whether it's scholars, people who were there, and people on the ground like the volunteers that he just spoke about. Again, those firsthand accounts are some of the most important that he had, and really important in terms of building bridges between these people who were often forced out of these communities and the people who are currently there. And so reclaiming that connection was very important. So we can also listen to some of the stories that he shared with me about people that he had spoken to who now feel a connection back to their hometowns.
We're connecting, Jews who remember life back home and young people on the ground in these countries who would, somebody would say, "Can you get a picture of the synagogue where my family attended?" And then somebody else on the ground would respond to it, usually a young person. So there's absolutely a great sense that if you can revive this history and have you build a bridge, a digital bridge in this way from the past and into the future. And some people have followed up on it, seeing sites in Morocco on Diarna and then going to Morocco and meeting with the families who now live in their homes. And in other cases, like Baghdad, it's not possible to go back. So we have the testimony. There was one person who we interviewed, Mrs. Hirdun, and she said, like, Diarna is my dream because I've always wanted to bring my daughters to Baghdad, and now I can.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear because sadly, of course, Jews can't visit some of the cities where their ancestors might have come from in the Middle East.
Yeah, exactly. And he described to me that there are many place-based questions that he asks, including, for example, where did your parents get married? Do you know where your grandparents are buried? So he uses those sort of questions to evoke that memory for them. He also described to me the urgency of this project, given the fact that not only are a lot of these Jewish heritage sites neglected and forgotten, but they're also located in various unstable regions. So we can take a listen to why this project is urgent now.
Sites, 3, 4, 5 decades removed from Jewish life, they were starting to decay. When most dramatically with ISIS, blowing up several sites, such as the mosque in Mosul, which within it had the purported tomb of Yonah, the prophet, or the Eliyahu Hanabi synagogue, which is, when you're asking about ancient places, I mean, that's also I would have given that as an example. Unfortunately, it was destroyed completely, looted, destroyed, and then even the rubble was bombed by the Russians. So this is, we felt the urgency of focusing on Jewish historical sites in the Middle East and North Africa, but the entire Jewish world needs this.
Just incredible that those synagogues and those sites have survived so much over the centuries. Sami, thank you very much indeed. Diarna, we should check that one out.
Yes, and to contact them if you have information or people to interview or photographs or anything like that.
Absolutely. Fascinating stuff. Sami, thank you very much indeed. Sami Israel there.